This is the Medical Marijuana Radio Show with Larry Love. All love.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio. This week we're going to talk to Matt Haddad from Trilogene Seeds. He has developed with his company hemp cultivars that have zero THC in it so that farmers won't go hot and lose their crops. So we're going to be talking to him in just a moment. First, don't forget our Late Night with Marijuana show every Friday and Saturday nights. That's midnight on the East Coast and 9 p.m. on the West Coast on Clubhouse. Check us out. It's a lot of fun. We hang, we smoke, and we talk. And now, without any further wait, here is Matt Haddad.
This is the Medical Marijuana Radio Show with Larry Love.
And we're happy to have Matt Haddad, who is from Trilogene. Trilogene Seeds is a team of award-winning breeders and growers creating feminized hemp seeds for extraction-efficient, tri-crop, and smokable hemp varieties. Their goal is to stabilize their catalog of elite hemp genetics across every photoperiod and microclimate in the world. Welcome, Matt. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Well, listen, I want to spread the word because, you know, with the 2018 Farm Bill, there were so many people in our country going into business, and some of them lasted 1 year. And one of the big reasons was that they had a hot crop because they didn't source their seeds properly. So Trilogene has, according to a wonderful press release I saw the other day, what they call, was it THC Null? Meaning zero THC. So tell me about what got you into creating this and what you've done.
Yes, absolutely. So we have been breeding hemp genetics really since 2015, but released our first genetic in 2016. And it was pretty apparent even then that keeping THCA and THC levels low, really at that 0.3 threshold at full maturity, was a difficult thing. There was a little bit looser regulation then, and it's kind of tightened up over the years. And about 2 years ago, we had the foresight to really understand that we needed to do something quick as a seed company to battle this issue. So we decided to aggressively invest our time and energy into some new genomic tools and leverage those technologies to our advantage. And some of these technologies are already proven in other crops. We're simply just identifying different traits and either silencing or amplifying those traits. So even now today, by far, the biggest problem is hot crop. Over 10% of all farms in the United States last year did go hot. And I'd argue it's actually a much higher number.
I would think that as well. That sounds low to me.
Yeah, 10% of crops that were actually destroyed, right? But the thing is if you know how to navigate the waters, you get the departments of agriculture to come out earlier to test your crops so that your THC is lower, and then harvest beyond that 2 week to 4 week window is how typically people have navigated those waters. So we wanted to develop this genetic for the industry, and we're at a rare time and space that these technologies have evolved and proof of concepts are already there. So the future is really limitless of what these things can do. But the zero T approach was the first move for sure.
Sure. So what you just said was you tried to do this quickly. So how quickly can you cross plants back and forth to stabilize them and get to the point to where, you know, you're testing it and, you know that it's got less THC, then you do something else to get less than that and so forth. So how long did that take? Because, I mean, you know, we all know that an F1 is just, you know, one cross and then you take so tell us about that, because if from 2016 you started doing this, or 2018, that's only like, you know, 3 or 4 years. So how'd you do that?
Yeah, so 2016 is when we released our first genetic. And just to clarify, I mean, specifically with the 0% THC variety, it's actually one of our most stable lines that's been worked since 2015, which is our Superwoman variety. The RNAi technology that we put into it really silenced the THCA synthase pathway. And it's the physiology of the plant is not different than Superwoman. So although it's genetically engineered and bioengineered, it's not a GMO in the sense that people normally think of taking kind of foreign DNA and putting it into this. So this is a clone-only phenotype. So it's a very stable phenotype that's part of our breeding stock and mother stock, and ultimately a phenotype that we feel expresses a lot of the strong traits we want to see. And, this is 2.5 years in the making for this specific cultivar.
So the Superwoman, you say, is clone only?
Yes, the Pandora, it's called Pandora, which is the 0% version of Superwoman. Yeah.
I see. So I'm just trying to figure out, how did you get it to a point to where it's like they test for THC and they find minuscule or absolutely null, zero?
THC null, yeah, completely zero. I think that was one of the common questions too, because there's been other companies previously who've marketed a 0% THC strain, trying to be slick to not mention THCA, which is the acidic form of THC. But this is completely a THC knockout. Yeah.
So was it THCA in some of the hemp plants that maybe after let's say sometimes they test in the field, they get an approval, and then they have X amount of time to harvest and so forth, a window of harvest, and so the longer it goes, then it could go hot or it could show up with some THC, right?
Not Pandora, but other varieties.
But most varieties, yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. So how has all this been like expressing other cannabinoids when you take out the THC, or other cannabinoids being proliferated? Is there more CBG, or how about the terpenes as well? How does the expression of the terpenes go?
Yeah, as far as the terpene expression, it's the exact same as our Superwoman variety. But when cannabinoids are produced in the plants, there's really 4 main synthases that they go through: either the CBGA synthase pathway, THCA synthase pathway, CBDA synthase pathway, and then the CBCA synthase pathway. So what we essentially did was a knockout of all pathways except for the CBDA synthase pathway. And at first we were a little nervous because THCA actually has direct linked to the immune system function of the plant. So we were worried, it'd be more prone to pests and pathogens and some other ridden diseases since the immune system is affected. But in fact, it really just got channeled into the CBDA synthase pathway. And there's been no noticeable inconsistencies from a physiology and agronomic perspective. So that's, certainly been a positive for us. And, this variety has been grown in greenhouse and indoor environments. This is the first year we are offering it for outdoor cultivators to do trials outdoors. So there's certainly a variable there, but based on the conditions and ways we flowered these out in our greenhouse, which is in Illinois, we're confident people are going to have good results.
Wow, that's so exciting, because so many people got hurt the first few years. And actually here in New Mexico, I think like the second and third years, they had hardly any people applying for hemp licenses and renewing. So it was sort of sad. So now you mentioned that your cultivars are developed so that they can grow in certain areas. Okay, so I saw a map recently of the United States. Okay, and then there was like these 2 lines that were going across like the midsection of the United States, and it said where hemp, can grow well. Okay, and then of course there's a bunch of states that are below that and above that. Can you tell me about that and how you're trying to acclimate cultivars to work in different areas of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a combination of things. One is we have a very wide range of varieties that are grown in different parts of the world. And we've matched a lot of those global hardiness zones, that they're typically called, to other ones in the United States and other countries. And those are lines we've decided to work and develop. And based on that lineage, let's say, for example, it's a cherry Kandar variety that's coming from Afghanistan or Pakistan. They're typically high altitude, colder temperatures, higher fluctuations, dry, sandy loam soil. So like Colorado, for example, was a very clear, similar global hardiness zone where it made sense to work some of those lines for similar environments. So we've basically been developing genetics and doing the best we can internally to mimic those climates, either indoors or at our Dutch style glass greenhouse in Illinois, and worked with other farmers in different countries to give us feedback, and in some cases even collect phenotypes of plants that are expressing the dominant traits we want to see. So we've worked with various universities since 2017, Cornell, University of Minnesota, Purdue, U of I, University of Central Florida, Texas A&M, and also with some international groups like the Heilong Jiang Agricultural Academy of Science in China, Health Canada in Canada, INASE in Uruguay and Argentina. So that's a constant development, especially when you're doing natural breeding processes, which is typically the long, slow, non-sexy way to do it. But now that we've been getting more agronomic data regarding these varieties, we can use some of our genetic marker assisted breeding tools to pinpoint areas of the gene where there's clusters of genes and similarities in traits where something might be less prone to powdery mildew, or a variety is more drought resistant. So that's a constant collection of data and collaboration with our farmers and clients. And it's only going to improve over time, but that's something we've certainly looked to do, because when people come to us, the two first questions we ask them is, where are you growing and what are you growing for? And by those responses, you can certainly start to pinpoint some of our genetics to say, okay, you're all about extraction efficiency. Your model is to bring this to CBD isolate. You're growing in a high altitude climate, let's say like Colorado. These are the 6 varieties we'd recommend. And likewise to, Florida or other parts of the world.
So you have varieties that would be good for extraction, right?
Yes.
Varieties that are high CBD. What's the highest CBD that you've been able to get out of one of your cultivars? Like where's that sweet range?
Well, if 0.3% total THC is not an issue, and it's more like 1% THC, which is what it is in Thailand and a few other countries, some of our CBD cultivars get up to about 27, 28%.
Wow.
But if you got to deal with the 0.3% total THC threshold, on the other hand, that's where there's more limitations. And that's ultimately where I think Pandora is going to thrive the most, because that threshold is such a small, narrow window that it's really hard to be compliant. And I think it's also why CBG has taken a big hold the past couple of years, is because those varieties typically are much harder to go hot, where some CBD cultivars are not as willing. So yeah, that's about where it is.
Wow. So do you work with THC at all, or are you just strictly hemp genetics right now?
Yeah, we started in the THC space prior to CBD. So I've been breeding and doing craft cultivation on that side prior to CBD, which is really why I got into it, because CBD was just years behind the THC world. There was less regulation, more opportunity, larger scale acreage, et cetera. So yeah, we have a tremendous THC catalog that's really just for medical growers within our state. And those are lines we continue to develop, but until you can actually patent protect some of these varieties like we can with hemp, it's more of a hobbyist endeavor.
Sure. I was going to ask you about that, because hemp is federally legal under those circumstances of the below, the 0.3. Let's see, how can I put this?
Yeah, in regards to the IP, the opportunities with hemp, I think are really big right now. And then with cannabis THC, I think it will get there, but right now it's non-enforceable.
Right. All seeds can be shipped across state lines, right? Because theoretically it's all hemp until it's grown out and tests over that percentage, right?
Yes.
But
question, but yes, you are correct in that the seed itself doesn't have any THC.
Right.
I mean, under that same premise, it can be interpreted even with the international distribution laws that I could send cannabis seeds across country lines.
Right.
We don't do that. That's certainly an extended risk we don't want to take. But in theory, yes.
Now, Trilogene, are they're on the stock market? Are they public?
No,
Oh,
we're
you're
a
not.
private and self-funded company. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And is there some link to Canada?
No,
Oh,
no link
maybe.
yet, but we're doing some trials with Health Canada, and we'll
Oh,
have
okay.
varieties approved this year for cultivation in Canada, but no other connections. Yeah.
So can you, in your opinion, what is going on with the hemp industry? Do you feel that some of these, obviously, with Europe and other countries being at the 1% and us being lower than that, how can the hemp rules be changed in order for the farmers not to get hurt and for people like you to proliferate your company? What needs to be changed?
I have a biased opinion in this, in that I don't lean on the government for much of anything. And I think with true innovation, a lot of times it takes entrepreneurs to step up and be aggressive with their endeavors and pursue things that may be a little unconventional. And that's essentially what we're doing. So we're not going to wait for the government to change it to a 1% THC law. We simply wanted to combine our resources, be aggressive with our entrepreneurial approach, and do this on our own. So I honestly think entrepreneurs have more control than the government, especially with these new technologies. But in a perfect world, if I could wave a magic wand, 1% THC laws would pretty much solve everything for the hemp industry. The other issues has really been the market saturation the past 2 years. I think, unfortunately, it brought in a lot of bad actors, people with ill intentions who wanted to become overnight millionaires. And now the finest cream has kind of rise to the top. A lot of companies have either gone bankrupt or consolidated or went public. And now a lot of the players really know who each other are, and we're starting to work more strategically. So for example, this year, we're going to have significant acreage that's under contract to be purchased by an extraction group. These are things people tried to make happen, years and years ago, but it just wasn't the right time. So I finally feel we hit our low point and that saturation came, but now it's a little bit on the rise of stability to like a bull market, I believe it's called.
So you have a background in setting up businesses previous to this in the cannabis industry, right? You have a background in extraction?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Where do you think that's going in the next few years?
I think the economies of scale, right? I think this year there will be even more companies that go out of business. And I think economies of scale and true partnerships to get consistent material is really going to win. Also that everybody who's doing it right. And what I mean by right is getting all your ISO certifications, GMP certifications, making sure your equipment is ASME certified, set up for the real buyers that we want to see, which is the biopharmaceutical space, and especially for like CBD isolate and full spectrum oil, that I think is where it's going. So I love to see and hear extractors say, you know what, I'm done with brokers. We know you're a trusted seed provider. We want to work with you to get consistent biomass. That's music to my ears, because at the end of the day, it's about a sustainable ecosystem for all of us here.
So, are your customers the end user? Or, I mean, you also have wholesale. I saw on your website, I believe, right? So, and I think that your retail prices are like $3 a seed, I believe, for certain cultivars that I saw on your website.
That's only that's for 10 packs. So
10
for
packs.
really small packs, and that's we offer as little as 10 seeds. So even a hobbyist grower or someone who is in their backyard who wants to give it a go and try it and grow some of their own medicine, we have options for them. And then wholesale, we really consider 1,000 seeds or more, which is more the professional hemp farmer, someone who's doing this as maybe a full-time or part-time gig rather than a hobby.
Sure. I thought that kilos were the way they sold seeds, but you can get them for under under kilos, which is 2.5 pounds. 2.2 is it, or 2.5? I forget. We haven't dealt.
And a lot of people on the industrial side buy seed by the pound, which is for a lot of fiber and grain dominant cultivars, and those are those essentially are completely dioecious, where they're about half male, half female, where our varieties are all feminized, and the flower is where you're primarily seeing the CBD produced, which is why it's more efficient to farm feminized varieties than let's say hemp seeds by the kilo for those varieties.
Right.
Yeah.
So you do have cultivars then for, let's say, if someone wanted to make fuel or hempcrete and fabric. Do you have those cultivars available also?
Yeah, 100%. Yes, we do. And we've been the past 2 years we've been doing some interesting trials in Wyoming to create tri-crop and dual crop varieties.
All right. So tell me what tri-crop and dual crop are, because there's a lot of people that I never heard of tri-crop until I read your bio today. So explain it to me and everybody else.
Yeah, tri-crop is essentially a way to get no waste in the plant and use every aspect of it. So in a perfect world, the perfect plant, which is still being developed, it's not out there yet, is a tri-crop variety where the top third can be harvested for grain, the bottom 2/3 can be harvested for biomass for CBD extraction, and then the stalks and stems can actually be used to make things like hemp hurd, hemp insulation, bioplastic, injectable molding, things of that nature. Where some of the misconceptions is with fiber dominant cultivars, everybody thinks that's what you need in order to have industrial applications. And that's simply not true. You do need fiber dominant cultivars that are long and tall for rope and t-shirts and things that require longer, denser fibers. But when you're looking at hempcrete, when you're looking at carbon sequestration, graphene production, even plastics and hemp plastics and injectable molding, cannabinoid-rich varieties absolutely can be used. It's the planting density that typically makes those types of seeds more woody and kind of drier at the end of harvest, as opposed to long, dense microfibers that have still some green stem in it, where you can harvest those fibers. So that's something we've been working on, especially in Wyoming, is to develop that true tri-crop. Mother Nature has been pretty tough on us the past 2 years, but this next year I'm confident we'll get over the hump, and next year we'll have some true tri-crops that will really thrive in a lot of environments here.
Yeah, I know that hemp wood is something, and hempcrete and so forth. These are items that are going to be proliferated over the next few years, and it's just a shame that prohibition has kept that away from our lifestyle and in our environment, which it can be very beneficial for. So, do you have like a percentage of how much hemp is being used for flour, for smokable flour, and then let's say hurd and all those other areas that hemp can be used for? Where's the bulk of it? I'm guessing it's CBD isolate is where the biggest product is being put out.
Yeah. I mean, the cannabis just became the 5th most valuable crop in the United States this year, next to corn, soy, hay, etc. And I think one of the fastest growing sectors in the industry has been the smokable hemp market. But a couple of years prior, but especially this year, I think fiber and grain is also going to take more hold. So I think everybody's just really trying to figure out how to monetize on every aspect of this plant. But at the end of the day, if you follow the money and you want to know, all the big reports we see about CBD being a $2 billion industry a year, et cetera, that is really about CBD isolate. Even all these miners that people, like Delta 8 has had a huge emergence. Delta 10 has had a huge emergence. HHC, all those stem from CBD isolate.
THCO acetate as well, right?
THCO acetate,
So,
yes.
so these are all cannabinoids that with a process of washing them with some kind of acid that it converts CBD to those other uh, what people call cousins to THC, which is really laughable. But where do you see that area of CBD going in the future? I mean, right now, obviously, there's not a lot of testing out there. We know that the Delta 8 thing just went crazy, and there was just so much garbage Delta 8 out there that could be dangerous. Do you think that the future, when we understand THCO acetate and Delta 10 and HHC, all that stuff, do you think there'll be a usage for that, a utility for those in the future?
Yes, I 100% think there's relevancy in a lot of them, and it is unfortunate because it is hard to regulate right now because all the conversions are just being done in the lab. So their starting product is completely compliant, and through gallic acid and things like that, you can convert them to other cannabinoids. But do I think they have some medical benefit and application when purged and done cleanly and
Hmm.
in the right atmosphere, the right setting? 100%.
Yeah.
What that is, I think, it still remains to be seen because sometimes the industry moves faster than research, right? So we need more of that for sure.
So tell me about which varieties you have for smokable bud for hemp, because I know several people here in New Mexico. We're just exploding now. We had you know a couple of years of our hemp industry and so forth, but and we've had medical since 2009 and 2010 is when we first started selling medical, and now April 1st, April Fool's Day, it's going to be time for adult use. But I still think there's a place for people who are newbies who maybe they should start off with a hemp variety instead of getting right into the THC. So, on the smokable hemp that you have, is that tea-free also?
There's just that one variety, Pandora, that's tea-free, but our other varieties can absolutely be grown and harvested compliantly. And that's taken a huge turn in the past several years because like in 2014, 2015, the hemp that was being grown, it's hemp, right? It's not
Hmm.
even something you considered smoking. It's for industrial applications and all these other uses. But as we started to bring in other marijuana varieties that maybe had higher CBD, started doing breeding and started doing the work, the flavor profiles and the terpene expression and the bud structure, I mean, the stuff now, even I can get tricked because it looks so good. It
Hmm.
looks very similar to THC. So that's one thing that we've really focused a lot on, and we've won a couple accolades for that at various expos. Just winning first place for the best CBD smokable flower, and I think there's a huge market for that. And even now, look at like my parents' generation of what high THC was back then was maybe 13, 15%.
Hmm.
We're now pushing levels of 30+%. And the reality is that brings on a decent amount of anxiety and uncomfortability where there's other cannabis users who want to be able to live their daily life and function without any sort of psychoactive component. And it's like exploding in places like Switzerland, Spain, different parts of Europe, and even in the States. So yes, I think as flavor profiles and genetics are developed more and people get to actually experience an enjoyable smoking experience through CBD cannabis, it's only going to grow.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a place for it. I just it's all about dosage when with cannabis, and of course, hemp and is cannabis. I mean, it's all cannabis. Okay, the only
Yes.
difference is that 0.3% makes it hemp if it's that or below. Otherwise, it's the same plant. Are there different varieties and cultivars that do different things? Absolutely. I'm excited about hemp hurd and hemp fabric and just all that stuff that can be made to and getting away from plastic. Is the process for making hemp plastic, is that viable enough, cheap enough to do that, to make it the regular plastic go away that's been like killing our environment?
I'd like to think so, but in full transparency, that's a sector we're not too involved in. We work with groups like Sauna Packaging, who do their own hemp plastic, but to be honest, that's not something I'm very
Mhm.
well educated in.
So I just want to get back to the taking out, breeding out, I guess is a great word for it, of THC. When you do that, did other, I think I touched on this question at the beginning of our interview, but did you find in testing that maybe other terpenes or cannabinoids appeared in higher levels because the plant wasn't making THC? Does that do anything to the other cannabinoids? No, it's an odd question.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the way I could best answer it is really separating Pandora, the 0% THC Null one that we just developed versus our other cultivars. And with the THC knockout, really nothing else is changed, because everything is just CBDA and CBD. There's no other minors and small levels of anything else, but it's just CBD, same terpene expression, same plant physiology as our superwoman, and that stays pretty much the same. On the other hand, with our other cultivars that can express, around that 0.3, that's where expression can get more aromatic as you let it go past, let's say, that 0.3% threshold in some cases. So, in places like Thailand and places like Argentina, those cultivators are able to push the limits on where it can go, and none of our varieties will ever express more than 1%, but you have seen enhanced terpene levels from being able to run it past that 0.3 total THC. I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Sure, thank you. Has Trilogene had thoughts or any experience in maybe, let's say, breeding for THCV, like some other areas of cannabis?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually already have two different CBG lines that we've released, and this year, seeds are actually available in April. We will have a CBDV line. It's called Vendetta. It expresses about 7% CBDV and about 9% CBD. So that will constantly be an innovation that us as a genetics company will be staying on top of and releasing new genetics that are more and more stabilized every year, and ultimately crossing them with some of our cultivars that express specific traits that we want to see. So, like, for example, the CBDV line has really just been grown in Colorado and in Illinois. So in order for us to make it thrive in a subtropical environment, for example, we might have to cross it to an autoflower, start to stabilize the autoflower trait within the genetic. So those are all things we kind of continuously do.
So what is CBDV? Is that like the V for Varin that's in the THC? Is that the same type of thing?
Yeah, correct. There's been various studies about CBDV for shrinking brain tumors, for some appetite suppression.
Oh, I heard that. Yeah.
So there's, the more these come out, the more they can be studied. And part of it is we know what these compounds are because of the lab and because of the chemistry side of it. But the reality is, in order to really bring those products out to market for the consumer and for people to get access to at a reasonable cost, that's not crazy, you need to start with biomass and material that is high in these minors.
Mm-hmm.
So in my opinion, a lot of the work and depends on the genetics company to make sure genetics are getting out there with higher levels of those. So, like CBDV, THCV, CBG, those are some of the low hanging fruit. CBC, I think, is next, which is great for pain alleviation. And then there's like things like CBN, which are great for sleep.
Yes.
But in my experience, it's over 98% identical to THC. So you can't have high CBN in a hemp plant that isn't hot.
Well, because THC over age and environment changes to CBN, right? Am I right about that?
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so
Oxidation and heat and that's how those products are hitting the market, is people are making CBD isolate, and the remaining stuff is really called mother liquor, which is typically, pretty high in THC. And that's usually crashed out, where you can crash out the THC and then convert it to CBN, so that you can, because it's CBN derived from hemp. And even though it is THC also derived from hemp, extractors need to do that conversion in order to make it available to the public. Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting what you're doing there. So obviously, you when you're growing out your crosses, so to speak, you can't grow them out to the whole plant, because that would take years to get to different F's and 3 and S's and stuff. So how long do you veg, and then what happens after, without giving out any of your SOP and your IP?
Yeah, no, sure. So like when you have phenotypes that you already know, and it's now just a matter of stabilizing further generations, those back crossing projects can be done in a tent. It can be done very small scale to get a certain amount of seeds. Then you can hunt those seeds, then back cross with the original pollen donor. So, that can be done in a relatively small space. Where the challenge lies is really commercial production, of when you have those lines already worked, where now you need to take the pollen donor and these pollen receivers in a large space that's off season, when you're not going to have any drifting pollen or any cross contamination, so that we can produce a lot of seeds that then farmers can grow outdoors at scale. So that's typically how that works.
I'm assuming that you have your own analytical lab in-house. I mean, it wouldn't pay to take it somewhere else, right? And you've set up labs before. So do you do that yourself? Do you do your own testing, analytics?
Honestly, we should, but luckily I have friends who have HPLCs and gas chromatography, and we just work out very
good deals for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We all know a guy who knows a guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we can get them some seeds, they can trade some services. We at least have some to trade.
I love the barter system myself.
Yeah.
So right now, it's January, it's almost February of 2022, and farmers are starting to. I would hope they're starting to purchase their seeds, because they're going to have to start popping soon in order to get them out at the right time. So are you fully stocked on everything that a hemp farmer needs right now?
We are, yeah. The one, I guess actually the two that are going to be a little bit delayed. We're not going to be able to, like the CBDV seeds aren't going to be ready till April. So April is actually when we can start shipping orders. We're taking pre-sales now though, as well as Pandora, our 0% THC clone. We're also taking pre-orders right now, but that's a clone variety that we would be delivering to their farm closer to planting season. So I think right now on the schedule, the earliest delivery is middle of May. That goes all the way till, the first week of July.
So as far as that beginning of May, I mean, these are obviously flats. Locally, how do you ship them? Is there a method of shipping clones?
Yeah, in fact, there is. We actually are part of FedEx's live plant program, where our minimum for live plants is 288 plants, which is about 4 72 cell trays. We had a custom corrugated box built for us specifically for these. And honestly, like 85 to 90% of the time it goes well, but we've all had those FedEx or Amazon truck drivers that throw something on your front step and ignore the warning and caution and handle with care labels. So sometimes that does happen, but at the end of the day, we always make it right.
And so are these boxes, do they have like little LEDs in them or something? Or I've seen some of these like for sending a couple of plants through the system. I've seen these kind of things, but so how does it take that length of time if you're not using some little lights in there or run on batteries in the dark? What is that going to do to a flat of hemp clones?
Yeah, at the end of the day, as long as the genetic is stable, it can be in the dark, for a couple of days. At the end, even outside, it gets cloudy, and some days it just doesn't get as much sunlight. So it's totally fine. There is a quarantine process that we recommend as soon as you receive them. Make sure they're quarantined and sprayed, where they're not put in a high intensity environment right after they traveled halfway across the country. So yeah, that's part of guidance that we'll help give to make sure that reacclimation to their environment is as smooth as possible.
How have you developed a variety that is hops latent virus free?
I wish. That's certainly a popular subject nowadays in the IPM world. It's pretty alarming how many crops are really have that kind of inherently as part of their systematic, the stems and part of their genome. But no, I guess is the short answer. It's certainly something we want to work on, but not yet.
I hear that if you, oh, got a little feedback there. I hear that if you take clones like the second or third generation, it can be bred out of a clone. You have to like keep taking them or something. I saw some story on there. Are you familiar with that one for the hops latent virus, that you can actually get rid of it, but if you have a plant that has it and you know hit it with the male and you grow seeds, it's going to be in the seed as well, is what I've heard. Is that
Yeah,
confirmable?
there's I mean, certain pathogen and pest-ridden diseases can absolutely be inheritable from the seed progeny. And in reference to cleaning clones, you can do like pathogen and pest indexing, which is usually done with tissue culture. I don't know of any techniques to essentially keep cloning to remove that inherent, ability to have hop latent virus, but I know through tissue culture practices, you can certainly get it cleaned up.
Do we know yet? I mean, we know what it does to the plant. It sort of makes them sick and spindly and not as healthy. But do you know what that might do? Is there any data out there about what it might do to the end user if they're smoking a plant that got into stores? And I guess it's too early to know what that could be.
Yeah. I think it might be too early to know. I don't know that there's any, consumer downplays. I mean, there's, things like spider mites that are also on pretty much 100% of outdoor and greenhouse plants, that are just kind of a natural part of it. I mean, they're on blades of grass, they're on the trees of leaves or leaves of trees. So it's just a natural thing. But I think an IPM system is certainly important to manage those environments as best as possible. And there are various like beneficial bugs, nematodes, things like that you can introduce into your garden. As long as they have an environment to survive, they will be your natural security guards and fight those things.
I hate it when I take that microscope and I see that orange thing going around. I go, man, that's terrible. So, Trilogene seeds. How can people get to your website and buy some seeds for this year?
Yeah, absolutely. Trilogeneseeds.com is our website. You can definitely go right on there, pay with a credit card, whether you're a hobbyist grower growing 10 seeds or inquiring about a larger wholesale order. Our sales at trilogeneseeds.com email address is always open for you. And honestly, I take a lot of calls as well as members of my staff and sales manager and such, where I can even get on the phone with you. Part of our process is knowing your circumstance so that we do the best job at recommending cultivars we know will succeed and help you thrive.
Before we go, can you tell me, like those zones across the United States, what states are in the best zones to grow hemp?
I would argue some of that probably, but subtropical environments are certainly the most difficult. Areas like, South New Mexico, South Texas, South Arizona that get extremely hot and dry, also pretty difficult to grow. So, I mean, I'm from Illinois, so maybe I'm biased, but the Midwest, as far as the soil, the temperature, the precipitation, the infrastructure, there's a lot of, I think, benefits to growing in places in the Midwest. But ultimately, this is a plant that's been cultivated all over the world for centuries. and we'll continue to do our best to acclimate it in every environment. So stay tuned there. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate your time today. And everybody, check out the seeds and the pictures on his website of some of the plants just are absolutely beautiful. This is what is going to fix the hemp industry, is having cultivars that won't go hot, because some of the rules in some of these states are that the farmers have to destroy that crop, which is really stupid now, because there's so many ways of remediating that hot THC out that, laws have to be changed in everybody's specific state. So thanks for working on this and helping farmers not go hot and to make a successful season. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate your help.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
We'll be right back after this.
This is the Medical Marijuana Radio Show with Larry Live.
Wow, thank you so much, Matt. Also want to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Once again, don't forget my Late Night with Marijuana show, Friday and Saturday nights on Clubhouse at midnight East, 9 p.m. West. We'll do that next week with another great guest. No, not three. Peace and love, everybody. Peace and love.
Oh yeah, it's a medical